Happy Memorial Day, everyone. A special thank you to our armed forces and veterans. Thank you for your service. I guess we can now consider summer as being here. For our story today, we're going to have to head back to a summer many, many years ago, toward the end of the decade that we still refer to as the swingin' 70s. The only swinging that might have happened in this story would be from a tree by one of the titular characters of the narrative we're calling the werewolf-type Dogman and the Stone Giant. Dear Scary Stories NYC, these days there are all sorts of organizations hunting and searching for all kinds of cryptids and phenomena. When I was a teenager in the 70s, my friends and I formed an early version of one of these kinds of organizations. I mean, really, it was a kids' club. I think we just wanted to camp and make it seem scarier. I don't think we really wanted to find any kinds of cryptids, and my reason for saying that is because we split up as a group after the night in which we saw not one but two kinds of cryptids. One, a sort of a Sasquatch, and the other, a particularly savage kind of what would now be called a Dogman. We had a name for ourselves, Arcane, R/Kane, as in R for research into the paranormal and strange, and Kane, as in Kane, Pennsylvania, where we lived with our parents and families. When we said research, we meant watching in search of, or reading books about monsters that we would have been voraciously reading anyway. And of course we also meant going camping and telling each other the scariest stories that we had read in those books. It was on one of those campfire nights that I first heard about real-life werewolves. I can't remember who told the story, but it was said to have taken place about 7 or 8 years earlier, in the early part of the 70s, in Wisconsin. As the story went, a woman supposedly called 911, reporting that a large, hairy, upright walking werewolf was on her property, trying to break into her house. The description of the creature in the story pretty much exactly matches the Dogman that you use in most of your thumbnails. It even had hands, with long claws, just as you show in many of your videos. When the Dogman couldn't break in to where the woman was, he went out to her barn and left scratches on her poor horse. So, who knows what he might have done if he had gotten inside the house. These days we have the internet, and it seems the story is online as a true one. Supposedly it really happened in Jefferson County, Wisconsin in 1972. The creature actually tried to break in on 2 different occasions and was described as being 8 feet tall. I was wondering at first if it might have been a starved black bear, but 8 feet tall is probably too tall for that. My main point is that I am certain we were all aware of the possibility of encountering something that looked like a werewolf, whatever it might turn out to actually be, when we set out for a week-long adventure in the Allegheny National Forest, which was just to our west. Obviously, I'm leading up to us seeing a werewolf-type entity in those woods way back in the 70s, and I've established that my small group did have werewolves on our radar as something that it was possible to see. We weren't like people who believed in Bigfoot but not UFOs, or ghosts but not fairies, that sort of thing. Not only were we open to the possible reality of anything which had ever been written about ever, but one of our goals as a group was to get to experience some part of the paranormal or cryptozoological world that nobody else had ever seen or written about before. Consequently, we were very open-minded, but that was because this was our hobby, not our business. This was what we did for fun, and we had a lot of that. So when I went camping with Bobby A and Bobby C in the Allegheny National Forest, and then Bobby C came back from taking a whiz, looking sort of shocked, and saying that there was a statue walking through the woods, neither of us doubted him. At first, I was visualizing a golem, but it turned out he was describing something far more like a Bigfoot. It was a tall, muscular ape man. but instead of fur, he seemed to be covered in some kind of hardened mud. Our terrified friend felt he had really seen a walking statue of a monster, and he was too spooked out to lead us back to the spot where it happened. In fact, he refused to go back in the woods, and he refused to be left alone. So Bobby A went looking for the creature for 10 minutes, then came back. He stayed with Bobby C while I went out, but I actually saw what had shaken my friend up. Up ahead of me, walking between trees with a somewhat determined and forceful gait, was exactly what had been described to me. It looked like a half-finished statue of a Sasquatch, done full size. It was enormous, just breathtakingly large. Not a man in a statue costume. The arms were longer than a man's arms. It was somewhere between 8 and 10 feet tall. In my gut, he was 10 or 11 feet tall, but that seems impossible, so I tell people 8 to 10. Maybe it just felt like he was 12, 13, 14 feet tall because of how surprised and unnerved I was to see him. I could hear him power walking by, and it sounded like someone pounding the flat side of a brick into the ground over and over again. He was not really moving that fast, so I decided to run ahead of him through the woods. I felt if I could get ahead and stay hidden, I could see where he was going to. I remember darting between the trees as I could when I was young and thin. The ground was soft, and I was able to gain a lead on the Dogman without making very much noise at all. Up ahead, I heard someone approaching on the path, and I hid myself to peer out and spy on whoever it was. Well, it wasn't a who, so much as it was a what. In my memory, it looks to me as though I were watching that Dogman from your thumbnails walking right past me. Of course, I was not yet aware of your channel in 1978 or 79 when this took place, because I hadn't bought my time machine yet, but my point is, it was a dark, furry, upright walking werewolf-style Dogman with humanoid arms, clawed hands, a wolf head, and canine back legs, which it was walking on, upright. Seeing that thing caused a reaction in me that is hard to explain, as it is for me to remember. I started walking back toward the first creature, then realized what I was doing. I was so surprised and so confused. I don't think I ever really expected to see a cryptid, let alone two cryptids, walking toward each other. This was exactly what I had thought I wanted ever since I saw Bobby Brady report a UFO to an astronaut on TV. I wanted to see something from that world beyond the veil. Monster, UFO, ghost, to me in the 70s, any of them were as fascinating as any other. So then I got what I wanted times 2, and instead of being on top of my game, ready to carry out a series of protocol items, I was wondering what I should be doing. I thought I believed in all this stuff, but I don't think I really did, until I found myself in that moment, on that night. Both of the creatures were approaching each other on the path, so I ducked behind a bush that afforded me a view of what was about to happen. Were they intelligent beings walking to meet up with each other? Were they animals, unwittingly walking into an unforeseen turf battle? What exactly was I seeing? The two creatures walked to within 2 feet of each other, stopped and stared forward, glaring, each in the direction of the face of the other. They gave an appearance of pure hatred, but they were not posturing and threatening the way normal animals would. They were just sort of standing there, almost perfectly still, glaring into each other's eyes. And then, in perfect synchronization with each other, the two turned their heads and upper bodies to look directly at where I was hiding. And then, as though they had rehearsed it beforehand, both the Dogman and the living Bigfoot mud statue creature thing took a step in my direction. I got up and I ran. I ran back to camp and I saw my buddies talking to some kind of law enforcement official. I guess maybe he was a park ranger or something along those lines, but he looked to me like a cop. I remember hoping he was a good cop and not a bad cop, because there were monsters in those woods, and we could use this guy on our side. I ran toward my friends and the officer or ranger shouting something. They at first turned to look at me. Then I noticed them looking past me, beyond me. I had been hoping those two animals stayed in the woods. I had been hoping they wouldn't be bold enough to venture out into the clearing after me. I remember seeing the officer wave me past him as he fired his handgun at what was behind me. I was way too close, and I couldn't hear anything out of that ear except for a ringing for quite a bit of time. I turned around, but I couldn't see the Dogman or the stone Sasquatch either. The ranger or whatever he was led us away to his vehicle, and he drove us to some place with bunk beds to spend the night. He told us to stay indoors until sunlight, and so we did. In the morning, when I could hear a little better, the ranger came back with a book and showed us what we almost got to mess with in hand-to-claw combat. First he showed us drawings and told us stories. The werewolf, the Dogman, generally thought to be from the Great Lakes region or Canada, but it comes down into Pennsylvania as well. The stone giant that we saw. This is a kind of Sasquatch that apparently rolls in mud, which cakes hard to his fur. The Iroquois people call him Genosqua or Genosqua, and Atneyarhe, which I believe means stone coat. They have stories stretching back to the old days, where their ancestors battled these creatures. Human weapons were unable to pierce the hardened mud covering, which had essentially turned to stone. So even if we had wanted to, we probably could not have in any way harmed that creature. It, however, could have easily harmed us. The ranger then showed us color photos pasted into his book, which he told us were his own personal private evidence collection of human and animal remains that he found in those woods. He claimed these killings were done by the Dogman and the stone giant. The victims of the werewolf were torn to shreds as though by a dozen knives. Those unlucky enough to have gotten caught by one of the stone giants had their heads twisted right off their bodies. The ranger insisted that the Iroquois legends describe this same manner of attack as shown in those images. I saw these photos that one time, that one night, and in all my adult life, I've never even heard a rumor of their existence again since. If the two Bobbies and I had been truly cut out for cryptid hunting, we'd have seen this as an exciting moment. Instead, we tossed our cookies and quivered like little children. The photos were extremely horrifying and undeniably real, and the three of us lost our appetite for monster hunting, and even for camping, for good and permanent. David Polides says the Park Service won't show him enough information. Well, we got the opposite treatment. I think the ranger meant to scare us into being more reasonable when we camped, but instead he just frightened us away from the outdoors in general. If this happened again today, I would have so many questions for that officer ranger guy, and I would have written his name down and kept in touch. I also would have picked his brains longer and harder than we did. For instance, how did he know where to be in that vast national forest, ready to save us from attack by the werewolf-type Dogman and the stone giant? It's time to thank Godzilla Tim. This show wouldn't be here without him. Please thank our super badass executive producer Godzilla Tim, who is one of a very special group of people that has been keeping the instant oatmeal in my bowl each day. I hope you guys have all been having a great Memorial Day weekend. Remember, you've only got till Tuesday the 31st to use our discount code HANK in the store linked to in our description. The merch will still be available after that, but it goes back up to full price. Well, happy Memorial Day to all our armed services and vets and all the rest of you too. And now for something completely this.
Wear a t-shirt that says how you really feel. I know Dogman is real. I'm allergic to Dogman. Dogman is my friend. I am Dogman. I set a captured Dogman free, and they made me a werewolf to silence me. Links are in the description. Get 20% off through Memorial Day using discount code HANK. Hank.
And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.